Our next guest speaker comes to you today from Hippocrates Health Institute in West Palm Beach, Florida. It is with the greatest honor and a heart full of love that I introduce Michael Bergonzi from Hippocrates Health Institute.
Thank you, Mary. Thank you. Hello, test, check, 1, 2. Hi, everybody. Hi. I'm not used to holding a microphone, but I'll give it a shot. We're going to do karaoke right now, so I'm taking requests. I'll do James Taylor, Billy Joel, the voice for that. Hi, everybody. Hi. Take a deep breath. Everybody breathing. First, I'd like to ask the question, how many people are here tonight? Raise your hand if you're here. See who's paying attention. Great. Thank you to Mary, Colleen, for inviting me up here. I'm honored to be here and be able to speak and maybe share some information, maybe things you've already heard. I'm glad Natalia went before me. She said all those good things about the food. And that's an awesome way to start, cleansing the body, obviously, before pregnancy is awesome. Honestly, we've had more people come to Hippocrates that couldn't get pregnant, spend 3 weeks with us, and then go back home and ended up getting pregnant in the next couple months. And some women actually weren't able to get pregnant at all, came to us for the 3 weeks, did our cleanse, and were actually go home and able to get pregnant. So there's a lot of interesting things that we do, and it's not just about the foods. I mean, the foods is a part of it, and I think there is a bigger picture. And I'm going to talk a little bit about that bigger picture, because it's kind of what more and more I believe in every day. I have to deal with this, I guess, for the last 18 years, and in my 18 years, and actually I'm 73, actually. 18 years. What are you going to do for 18 years? And in the 18 years in this, I've seen everybody go through the program. Whether you're healthy or sick, it doesn't matter. Have disease, viruses, the body's able to cleanse itself when given the proper tools. And ultimately, that's what Hippocrates is about. And I'm not going to spend a lot of time explaining Hippocrates. I think our brochures are on your seats. You can take a look at it. You can go online. You can look at our website, obviously, and learn a little bit more about what we do down there. But I like to say that I think in the medical field out there, if you go with, a particular cancer to the doctors, well, they're going to give you a 50-50 chance. And ultimately, what they told you when they said 50-50, they didn't say anything. They said there's as much chance this way as this way. Well, I knew that before I came in here. Well, ultimately, Hippocrates, I'll give you a 95% chance. After a 3-week program that you spend with us, 95% of those people are going to get better, and their bodies are going to heal themselves. It's nothing magical that we do. It's allowing the body to take care of itself. And 95% chance, and where's the other 5%? How come it's not 100% of people are getting better? Because if you're in that little 5% category, and you come through our program, and you spend 3 weeks with us, and you do the green juice, and you do the wheatgrass, and you're doing the colon cleansing, as Natalia was saying, I hope we can continue talking about poop because I like to. And you're doing all of our program, and after 3 weeks, you're still not feeling better, then I'm going to tell you this. It has nothing to do with food for you. But you know what it does have to do with? It has to do with your family, your job, your spouse, and your friends. That's your problem. And it's interesting, a lot of people don't want to hear that part of it. Well, it's easier to say, isn't there something nutritionally that I can just take to fix my problem? Yeah, quit your job. That's going to solve your problem faster than I can nutritionally. And I'm coming more and more to the belief in my life, and I haven't tapped into this information yet, but I know it's there. Everybody has it. We all have the same information, by the way. It's just about tapping into it and getting involved and allowing it to break free of our conditions, of our patterns, of our programs, of our whatever family conditions, our friends' conditions, our religion conditions. And we kind of lose sight of that inner light that we all have, that connection within all of us. And I haven't tapped into this yet, but I know it exists. In other words, I really feel like a thought can change you and change your health faster than a 3-week program can. But I don't know how to tell you that just right off the bat. So if I can start you on the foods and get you to start cleaning out the body, then eventually you'll tap into that energy and that thought, and you'll know it. And have anybody heard of Chris Carr, CrazySexyCancer.com? She's awesome. Chris is a health educator, as Mary is as well. And she speaks of green juices. I love Chris. She speaks of green juice. She speaks of wheatgrass, obviously, wheatgrass juice, fresh wheatgrass juice. But she also speaks of this, the positive thinking. Because ultimately what you think you create. And that's the truth. And I'm not going to get, too religiously on you or start talking about that stuff. But I am going to say that's the connection that we all need to find again, is that positive connection. Because the negative's out there too. You know that to be true, right? I mean, if you look for something wrong with anything, you're going to find it. And ultimately, if you look for something good, you're going to find that. And people say, well, what do you do in your life? Because, you look pretty healthy. You've been in this a long time. And actually, I'm due for a cleanse myself because I like to spend a week there at Hippocrates myself. I do a week every 6 months or so to do my little oil change, my detox week. Because when I'm out in the world, I like to retox. Feel free to laugh anytime because I'm due it for the next hour. And I spend a week there and do my own little cleanse because ultimately, for me personally, after the years I've been in this, it's not so much about the food anymore. For me, I've already kind of learned the most important things. I've done a lot of cleansing in my life. I got to work with Tart-Jensen. Tart-Jensen spent 11 years with Bergonzi and talking about, obviously, colon cleansing and, as Natalia was saying, the colonics. And there's actually something called the Kalima board. If you haven't heard of Kalima board, basically, again, gravity fed. You do it at home. You do it in your own bathroom. A lot better than an enema. And I remember when I first did my enema. I think it's harder for males to say that than it is for females. But it was interesting because I got out to an institute in California where I started in 1990, and they had talked about enemas and colon cleansing, everything you heard Natalia saying, how good it was, how important it was. And I remember working there. I went to the vegan thing. I did the raw thing. And after about 5 years, I was doing my 1 week every 6 months of just juice. I do just liquids for 1 week as well as I didn't do colon cleansing. So I was doing 5 years, 1 week every 6 months of doing a juice cleanse. And so I'm traveling around with this little doctor from India, and I said, yeah, I'm on my 4th day of just juice. And she looked at me and she said, well, you're doing the colon cleansing too, right? And I said, no. And she said, well, you know how important it is to do the colon cleansing? I said, well, yeah, I know how important it is. I've been working at this place for 5 years. Of course I know how important it is. So she stopped talking to me. I stopped talking. And then after a couple minutes, she looked at me and she said, Michael, why aren't you doing the colon cleansing? And I said, I don't know. Maybe it's the guy thing. Maybe it's the butt. I don't know. And so she explained how easy it was. And I remembered the first day I was going to go home and try it. So I went home. I deadbolted my front door. And I went into the bathroom, and I locked the bathroom. I put a chair in front of it, and I lived alone at the time. And after about 5 attempts, I think I got an enema right. But I can say after getting into colon cleansing, it made a difference in my life. I always like to explain it this way, and excuse me for talking about poop again, but I think it's an important thing. We should all talk about it a little bit more freely. But if you take mud and you throw it on the concrete, and you walk by that mud and you spray it with a garden hose for 5 seconds, that's an enema. You walk by that mud, spray it for about 20 minutes, well, that's a Kalima cleanse. That's a little bit better. Spray it for about 45 minutes, now that's a colonic. So that everybody understands. So it builds up inside, but that's why we get it with water. You keep spraying it. And yes, it is hydrating, actually. Because when I was doing the Kalima board cleanse, you do a 5-gallon bucket, gravity fed, that you will have to urinate. You will have to go to the bathroom. So it does, your body does absorb that water as well. But it's also washing you from the inside out. So, okay, enough about talking about the poop things. Now, we get into this, and I got into this back in 1990, and I always like to start out by, people meet me out in the world, they say, what do you do for a living? Because everybody always wants to talk about what do you do for a living, so I tell them I grow grass, and they reach for cash and whisper, how much can I buy some of that, man? Is that good stuff? So let's talk about marijuana and see how we can grow it today. But no, it's wheatgrass. And when I got into this, I was doing a little bit of everything, and I wasn't really sure what I wanted to do in the field. And all of a sudden, the wheatgrass department opened up, and I said, I'll give that a shot. Let's start growing some grass. Okay, so now let's break this down really simple. First of all, human beings. Are we mammals? Anybody agree with that statement? Human beings are mammals on the planet Earth, correct? Okay, well, 85% of your mammals on the planet Earth are living on grasses and leafy greens. We are one of the few mammals that still eat meat, and we are the only mammal that cook our food. That's human beings. And as a matter of fact, your mammals out there in the world that actually eat meat, anybody know the difference between them eating meat and us eating meat? They eat it live. They kill it and eat it right then and there. That's still live food, you get it? So it's live food. Now, your mammals out there that actually eat meat are sleeping all day long, right? Because that's a lot of food for the body to digest. Okay, but most of them are herbivores. Most of them are eating your grasses and leafy greens. And I'm talking about your elk, your deer, your moose, your giraffe, your gorilla. I go on. And people will say, well, we're not them. Well, first of all, you just agreed that we're mammals. Okay, that's the first thing. And never once in my lifetime have I ever seen an elk look at a deer and say, "Did you get enough protein today?" "No, I didn't get enough protein. How about you?" I never seen that question. And it's interesting because most of us grew up on red meat and dairy in the past. I grew up on red meat and dairy. Most of us grew up on red meat and dairy. Well, honestly, in the past, when you lived on red meat and dairy, indirectly, you lived on grass. Cow ate the grass, we ate the cow, the earth was in our food chain. Made sense. Nowadays, your cows are being trough-fed a bunch of grains, corn, which is even worse, making their bodies too acidy. Now they're being shot up with antibiotics, steroids, hormones, yes. So your red meat and dairy doesn't contain the grass any longer. That's your problem. Take a deep breath. Anybody not breathing in here? Raise your hand. Not breathing. Okay, I can't help you. Sorry, I failed that class. Annie, are you all right? I just left her there. Ultimately, that's the problem. See, in the past, you lived on red meat and dairy. You ate the cow ate the grass. Earth was in our food chain. It made sense. Nowadays, being trough-fed, and if you don't, I hope I can draw this connection and not really freak you out too much, but ultimately, when a cow eats from the trough, it eats as much as it can, and then it goes take a nap, right? You've seen cows laying down. Oh, obviously, we live in the city. I forget where I am sometimes. But I see cows laying down now. Cows aren't supposed to be laying down, but they're laying down now because they're going over to the trough, and they're getting full, right? So follow me on that. So if they get full, what happens after you eat a big meal? You get tired, right? Everybody knows that. You get tired after a big meal because all your body's going to digest that food and trying to get out of you as much as you can put it in you. So the cow goes and takes a nap. Okay, cows aren't supposed to be laying down. That's the first problem. If the cow's not eating the green, the cow actually is now not getting the protein because ultimately the protein is coming from the greens. Protein doesn't come from meat. Protein comes from the greens because if the cow's not eating the greens and it doesn't have it in it, then you don't have it in you. And so that's our problem. Look, I've been in this too long to judge you for what you choose to eat. I don't care. I'll take a deep breath. I'll hang out with you. I'll still be your friend. But I have learned that I'm going to educate you and just say what she said, that if you're going to go eat meat, make sure you're eating meat that's been eating grass because the earth has to be somewhere. Get it? I'll say that again. Earth. The earth has to be somewhere in your food chain. I don't care where you get it. You can go right to it. You can eat the grass's leafy greens or go ahead and eat the cow that's been eating the grass. But the earth has to be somewhere in your food chain. That's number one. And now, cows are being trough-fed laying down. If you think about this big picture, take a deep breath. The big picture, human beings, we're being trough-fed. We are being bred to eat as much as we possibly can. Look at fast food everywhere, right? Food is the biggest industry in the world, by the way. If we're not aware of that. Food's everywhere, right? Gas stations, you can get food. Delis, obviously delis all over the place, you get food. Food's the biggest industry in the world. And guess what? We think of addictive habits in the world. What do you think of? Alcohol, tobacco, sugar, caffeine? Nope. Biggest addictive habit in the world, number one? Food. And not only is it our biggest addictive habit, and it's the biggest industry, it creates the second biggest industry. Anybody know what the second biggest industry is? Healthcare, drugs, prescriptions, medical, right? That's our second biggest industry in the world. Because when you do one, you're going to have to do the other. And ultimately, I think the biggest false statement out there, besides the one, well, there's not enough protein in the raw food diet, that's a false statement, first of all. But the second false statement would be breakfast is the most important meal of the day. When I say false statement about breakfast, the most important meal of the day, because when a lot of people hear breakfast, they think, I'm going to have a balanced breakfast, right? So you're going to have your bowl of cereal and then your pancakes and then, a glass of orange juice to balance it all out. Okay, first of all, understand the definition of breaking a fast. Breakfast, right? When you're eating breakfast, you're breaking a fast. So what's the best way to break a fast? Not with big bulk food. The shot of wheatgrass juice, green juice, right? Or that fresh grains, the millet, the quinoa, the buckwheat groats. Those kind of things. That's a way to break a fast. But not these big meals, because ultimately you eat that big meal, and I know what it does for me, personally. If I eat anything big, bulky for breakfast, which I do once in a while, I'm going to tell you that. I'll be honest with you here. Can we all be honest tonight, really? But for me, personally, if I eat that big meal for breakfast, I'm hungry all day long. And I know the opposite happens for me. If I don't have anything for breakfast, I'm not hungry all day. Nor do I even think about food all day. As a matter of fact, the only time I ever think about food is if someone's standing next to me tell me how hungry they are. That's the only time. I don't hang around with people that talk about food. I don't have many friends, by the way. Well, because what does everybody want to talk about? Everybody always wants to talk about food. That's the last thing I ever want to talk about. 18 years in this. Last thing I want to talk about is food. I get it. I get it. It's already there. I know that. But raise your hand if you agree with me. How many people are emotional eaters? I got news for you. If you didn't raise your hand, you are an emotional eater. Most of us are. Most of us are emotional eaters. I'm an emotional eater. In my choice in the last 12 years or so, I choose now to eat once a day. I eat at the end of the day. I don't think about food. I don't care about food. Food doesn't take power over me any longer. However, the one time that I do eat is the same reason you eat 3 times a day, for the emotional reason. Because there's depression in my family. It helps me sleep at night. It fills me up. And what does filling you up do? Stuffs down your emotions, right? Human beings don't even want to be in front of each other anymore unless there's food there. You meet somebody on the street, what's the first thing you do? Let's go out to eat. Let's go out to dinner. Let's go out to lunch. Let's go. And then we do it for the emotional reasons. Let's go celebrate. I just got a job. Let's go eat. We're going to get married. Let's go eat. Let's go eat. Let's go eat. Let's go eat. And then we do it for the opposite. We do it for emotional reasons the opposite way, which is I'm sad. I'm alone. You know, we use the Ben and Jerry's. We eat for emotional reasons. And most of us are emotional eaters because honestly, if food's in front of you, when you're talking to somebody else, it becomes that security blanket, right? In other words, well, I'm not really comfortable with what that person's saying to me. Oh, you lost your job? That's too bad. I can just start eating, and I don't have to feel that stuff. And when people come through our program, you know, I think it's really hard for a lot of people to come off the standard American diet and then start getting into this raw food thing or this juicing thing because they do go through emotional things. And it's the addictive habit of wanting to eat the food because, first of all, we're programmed to eat 3 times a day, breakfast, lunch, and dinner. Okay, everybody's programmed to do 3 times a day. And ultimately, every time you eat food, fills up your stomach. When it fills up your stomach, it's going to create the opposite effect, which is hunger. So they want you to eat breakfast because they want you to be full right away, so eventually you're going to be hungry again soon. So ultimately, we're eating probably tenfold the amount of food we should be anyway. Now, Natalia gave you some great options up here. Okay, in other words, food is a choice. Food's not a god, it's not a cult, it's not a religion, it's a choice. If we all went to a buffet right now, and there was all the different choices of food, and this was on there, on the buffet, and then all the other foods was on the buffet, we can still choose whatever we want, correct? And then, can we still not eat at the same table? Everybody take a deep breath. I'll give you a whole class on breathing, by the way. Hour-and-a-half lecture right now. Count to 3 on the inhale, count to 3 on the exhale. And I'm going to get into telling you why breathing's good. If you haven't figured it out, breathing is good. Tough crowd in here tonight. I'll be here all week. Now, so, and the reason I say that about the emotional buffet, because I think I'm going to write a book, and it's going to be called Food, Our Emotional Buffet. Because we're becoming a society of judging people for their choices of food. And I think that's too bad. Because I don't want to be judged for my choice of food. And I don't think you do either. But too many people come up to me, and I travel all around, and, you know, when Dr. Brian Clement, he can't make it to health things, or I come to shows like this, and people see me, and they say, well, how raw are you? And I just kind of smile, and I'm like, man, that's a judgment right there. But I take a deep breath, and I say, well, you know, I do the program 1 week every 6 months. I clean out. I've been this 18 years. I get it all about food. It's not about food for me anymore. And they just look at me, and they're like, well, yeah, but you work for Hippocrates. You know, you should be all raw. You should be doing this. You should be doing that. Wow, what are you attacking me for? I just told you I do 1 week every 6 months. And so then we get into the subject of, well, I only eat once a day. And they tell me, and these are vegans and vegetarians. These are healthy people. Everybody know the difference, by the way? Because no one ever told me that, vegan and vegetarian. No one ever told me. I thought they were the same thing, but they're not. Vegetarian actually is the perfect word. But a few people in the back heard the word vegetarian and say, well, he didn't say anything about dairy. I'm going to go have some dairy. And so now we had to come up with the word vegan. So vegetarian, you don't eat meat. Vegan, you don't eat meat or anything that came from meat. I know a lot of you going, oh, I already knew that. No, you didn't. Be honest. Okay, so vegans and vegetarians, they're coming up to me at these health shows, and they're going, there's no way you can eat once a day. And I smile, take a deep breath, and I say, I've been doing it for 12 years. What's your question? And they say, well, I get a headache by 12 or 1 o'clock if I don't eat a second time a day. I just heard my answer, a second time a day, which tells me you ate breakfast. So now I know where to go. Okay, well, I smile and I say, well, what'd you have for breakfast? And they all tell me the same thing. They had a bowl of fruit, a glass of carrot juice, or a smoothie. Does anyone in here know what those 3 things have in common? Sugar. So basically, you got high from the sugar in the morning, and you're crashing by 12 or 1 o'clock, and you're getting a headache because you're crashing from the sugar high you gave yourself in the morning. That's your problem. Okay? Ultimately, a way to break a fast, the green juice, Okay, the green juices, awesome way to break a fast. You don't want to use a lot of carrot. You don't want to use a lot of carrot for the main reason of it's mostly sugar, especially these days. I mean, unless you're able to get some good carrots, it's mostly sugar these days. So your green juice is a better choice to break a fast. As a matter of fact, if you did a little shot of wheatgrass juice, fresh wheatgrass juice, and the stuff you get here in the city, unfortunately, is pathetic. And I wish I was up here growing grass because, yeah, I've had some of the stuff you have here in the city, and it's disgusting. And as a wheatgrass grower for the last 18 years, I could not grow grass every day of my career if I had to hear, wow, that stuff's really disgusting. How can anybody drink that? And I don't blame you. I wouldn't drink the stuff here in the city. First of all, you're spending, what, $3 to $4 for an ounce of it? And it doesn't taste good. It's making you sick, making you feel a little nauseated. That's because it's dead. It's been sitting in that tray. It hasn't been watered. They haven't taken care of it. I don't know who's growing it, but he ain't growing it right. So I educate people on how to grow it, by the way. I'm not going to get into that. I can sit here for another hour telling you about that. But a fresh shot of wheatgrass. Now, if you did healthy wheatgrass, fresh wheatgrass, a little 2-ounce shot of wheatgrass is equivalent to almost 5 pounds of fresh vegetables, nutrient value. So in other words, you did that little fresh 2-ounce shot of wheatgrass, you would really need your little 1 a day plus iron. You wouldn't need all those little extra vitamins and all these little pills you're spending all that money on, right, for all those different things. You wouldn't need those anymore. Little fresh 2-ounce shot of wheatgrass. Now, working on a program to get you some grass at home with a little juicer. There's a little hand juicer out there. It's like $45. It's a little, it's a single auger. It's a single auger unit. So it takes the blade of the grass, it wrings it out, so it doesn't oxidize, it doesn't heat it up. A lot of things that you're going to hear later on tonight. And that's the kind of juicer you should be juicing the wheatgrass with. It's okay, the slow turning machine, obviously. But a fresh shot of wheatgrass. Now, ultimately, that's a meal. And your 1,000-pound mammal out there in the world is literally only looking for about 6 to 8 ounces of wheatgrass every day. That's all it needs. A grass. Let me start out with this one. Anybody here Ann Wigmore? Ann Wigmore basically had founded the Hippocrates. She founded the whole program kind of thing. And she did it by chewing on lawn grass. Not wheatgrass. It was lawn grass. And I know a lot of people are like, what do you mean lawn grass? Well, Ann Wigmore, actually, if you read her book, she talks about being in Central Park, chewing on this grass. Probably not the best grass in the world to be chewing on, but she was chewing on grass, and she was chewing on it all day long, and that's all she did. You know the main difference between us and most of the mammals out there in the world? You know the main difference? They chew their food. We don't. Human beings engulf food. You don't believe me? Look in the toilet behind you when you get up. We engulf food. We swallow food. Nobody spends any time chewing food. And Ann Wigmore knew that no one spent time chewing food, so she came up with blending food. You probably heard that, blending your food. Because she realized that if you blended it, then and you ate it after it's blended, then your body is a lot easier time to digest it and pass it through your system. Because we're getting back to food again, right? We're going back to understanding that we're eating too much. So blending food was a better choice than sitting there and chewing it because you're not going to chew it enough. The blender's going to do all that work for you. But now, she came up with blending food because they didn't have juicers back then. All they had was blending. So that's why that was a better choice. But now they have juicers. And she understood now taking the fibers away from it actually now made it easier for your body to digest everything. Literally, within 15 minutes of having a green juice, your body's digested it, and now it starts working on taking care of you. That's the key. It was the lack of food that was healing her faster than anything else. Her body was now having time to take care of itself. What do the greatest healers of today, yesterday, you can keep naming them, Gandhis, Buddhas, I don't care what you want to call them, but what do they teach? First of all, they teach what? Fasting. Everybody remember that one? That's all they teach, fasting. They teach meditation, silence, right? And breathing. So, what are we going to talk about today? What's simple is true. Take a deep breath. I keep telling you to do that. Okay, 3 on the inhale, 3 on the exhale. It's a good thing. And then she chewed on grass. After a couple weeks, she finally started to feel better. And then she developed a 3-week program. Now, 3 weeks, 21 days, allowing the body to get over addictive habits, taste buds to change. That's the idea of having a 3-week course, by the way. So ultimately, once she decided that grass was good, well, now she wanted to find out which grass is the best grass to have. So she took wheat and rye and barley and spelt and oats and kamut and Kentucky bluegrass and any grain that would grow into a grass within about 7 to 10 days. Now, here's the thing. Natalia was saying this, too. Okay, she was saying that wheat isn't as it once was, and I'm going to tell you that, too. Because, first of all, red meat and dairy isn't as it once was. We already talked about that. But wheat. Okay, what do you think we eat in North America? Wheat products, right? Go into the grocery store. breads, flour, dough, pasta, pastry, crackers, cookies, Eggos, pizza crust. Almost everything is made from the wheat seed. Whether you want to call it white or wheat, it's still made from wheat ultimately. And so now we're developing allergies to wheat. First of all, no human being, no mammal should be allergic to wheat. We are now. We are now because, and I went to a farm in Colorado years ago, and the farmer taught me that after they harvest the field of wheat, they take that seed and they put it in the silo, right? That's for the bread, flour, that's for everything we're eating. And then there's a stalk and a husk of the seed that lays there on the earth. Okay, but the farms weren't turning their land over fast enough. So what they did was they learned that they could roll that up. You've seen those big hay rolls if you travel. You've seen those big bale hays. Okay, then that's what they've learned. They can roll that up, and they can usually sell that, make a profit on that, and then they can plant the next crop of wheat immediately in that same field. Well, by doing that, they depleted that soil tenfold as what it should have been. Because ultimately, the farmer taught me about summer fallow, which means you're supposed to let that stalk and that husk sit there for a whole season and decompose and put its nutrient back into the earth before you plant the next crop of wheat. As a matter of fact, smart farmers actually plant a different crop in that field, let that go to maturity, and sow that in before they plant the next crop of wheat. Because I got news for you. If it's not in the seed, it's not in you. And if it's not in the seed, it's not in the bread, flour, dough, pasta, all those things I mentioned. So here we are now developing allergies to wheat because the seeds aren't what they used to be because the earth has been depleted. Deep breath. Are we learning anything yet? Okay, so the soils are depleted. So ultimately, if it's not in the seed, it's not in you. And so hence the reason of these spelts and kamut grains. Now, I try to buy wheat seeds from farms that are aware of soil depletion and actually spend a lot of time putting nutrient back into the soil before they plant the next crop of wheat. So I try to buy my seeds from farms that are aware of that. So my wheat seed is actually a lot better than most seeds out there. Now, your average person is going to go home and start growing wheatgrass, and they're not going to have luck with it because probably they're buying the wheat from the local health food store, and it's not that good. So remember how I said no human being should be allergic to wheat. But now we're not able to digest that gluten. By the way, once you soak and sprout wheat, it breaks that gluten down into simple sugars. Okay, once you soak and sprout that wheat, it breaks the gluten down into simple sugars. Natalia was talking about nuts. Okay, if you soak them first, they are now pre-digested, a lot easier for the body to assimilate. We always soak our nuts, said Hippocrates. We soak our nuts. Is this thing on? Can you people hear me out there? Okay, so bad jokes too. Sometimes they're really bad. What are you going to do? So, okay, when you soak it, you sprout it, you break that gluten down into simple sugars. Anybody can eat sprouted wheat. I'm allergic to wheat, but I can eat sprouted wheat. Okay, once it's soaked and sprouted, it's pre-digested. It's living food. Hence the reason sprouting your grains. Mungs, lentils, atzukis, fenugreek seeds, whatever grain you have, always soak it first. Make it pre-digested. This is for everybody. This isn't just for people on the raw food diet or people eating the mainstream diet. Anytime you're eating seeds, nuts, grains, soak them first. They're pre-digested that way. It's a lot easier for the body. And people that actually have hard time eating nuts can now eat them if they've been soaked first. Okay, and actually with nuts, if you soak them first and then you dehydrate them, low temperature, you dehydrate them, now they still retain their life energy. They're still pre-digested, but now you still have that crunch to it. And you can store them, and you can, store them for a long period of time. I'm not going to get into food combining with you tonight. But, so we learned one thing so far. Get the earth back in our food chain. Okay, the earth has to be back in our food chain. I told you why wheat wasn't what it once was. I told you why red meat and dairy is not what it used to be. Okay, let's get on to the next thing because this is fun. Oxygen. Okay, so your animals, your mammals are eating the greens, chlorophyll. Right? We talked about chlorophyll. Mary talks about chlorophyll. You've heard that definition. Chlorophyll, sun's energy, that's our life. So we have to have the greens back in our diet somewhere. And I'll prove this statement to you. Ann Wigmore's grandmother made a statement to her, and I love the statement. It took me a whole weekend to memorize it, but here it is. Instinct-guided creatures left to themselves do not make mistakes. Let me say it again. Instinct-guided creatures left to themselves do not make mistakes. I will prove that statement to you right now. How many people, show of hands, how many people chewed on grass or weeds when you were a kid? Anybody just go by it and start picking up grass? And I forget we're in the city again. Sorry. You don't have much of that around here. But most people, when you were young, thank you, I got a couple people in the back. Most people, when you were young, you chewed on grass and weeds when you were a kid because everything instinctually told you to do that. Because maybe you saw the other mammals out there doing it. I don't know. You saw cats and dogs. Anybody see cats and dogs chewing on grass? Well, you don't have it here. I can't use this stuff here. It doesn't work. But cats and dogs chew on grass, and then what happens, if you've ever seen cats and dogs chew on grass, what do they do after they chew on it? Right, they'll throw it up. Exactly. In other words, your animals instinctively know when they're not feeling well, that's when they go chew on grass. In other words, they're sick to start out, but they can't tell you they're sick. So they start chewing on the grass, and they know whether it comes up, whether it stays down, it's going to help them. So instinctually, as kids, as children, we know to go to the greens. Instinct-guided creatures left to themselves do not make mistakes, and that's the truth. You left a child out there, it would know, and it would be able to survive if you didn't verbally say anything to it. And it had green in its life, it would know to eat the greens, instinctually. Every cell, every ounce of energy in that child's body will tell it to go to the greens. But then, of course, now why does it stop? Because your mom comes out, sees you chewing on grass, and goes, spit that out. Ew, we're going to go have salad later. What didn't you understand? The greens. Okay, the greens need to be back in our food chain. That's where your protein comes. That's where your life is coming. That's where everything's coming from, is those greens. So they got to be back in there somewhere. All right, so now we're getting to the oxygen thing. So she learned that grasses, leafy greens, the most complete foods on the planet Earth. She also learned that the grasses and leafy greens are blood purifiers, blood cleansers, detoxifiers, pulling heavy metals from the body. Actually, the closest thing to the human blood was the juice of these greens. So then she learned this, and I'm teaching this to kids in high school these days, is that chlorophyll. That chlorophyll helps the hemoglobin distribute oxygen to the cells. Take another deep breath. Chlorophyll, that green, here we go again with greens. That chlorophyll helps the hemoglobin's job is to distribute blood in the cell, to distribute oxygen to every cell. So the chlorophyll helps the hemoglobin to distribute oxygen to every cell in your body. Now, why is that important? What's the first thing your body needs? Before food, before juice, before water? What's the first thing? Oxygen. I can take the other way away from you, and if you know how to survive, you'll survive for a long time without those other things. But you're not going to survive long without oxygen. That's the first thing your body needs. And as a matter of fact, if oxygen existed in your cells, bad bacteria, diseases, viruses, cancers could not survive if you had oxygen in your body. Now, here's another fact. And that's a proven thing, by the way, that oxygen is your cancer fighter. Because and that's why living foods are working. That's why people are putting this life back into oxygen, the energy, whatever you want to call it. It's the oxygen. Okay, now, if you go into the medical field with a cancer, a lot of times, if your HMO will cover it, they'll put you in a hyperbaric chamber to slow your cancer down. Ever know what a hyperbaric chamber is? Basically, it gives you more oxygen under pressure. It gets deeper in the cells. Take a deep breath. Okay, they'll put you in a hyperbaric chamber because it slows your cancer down exactly. In other words, it raises the percentage of oxygen in your body, and the cancer slows down. Okay, so now we're getting somewhere. So oxygen is the first thing we need. So how do we get it back into our body? Because we're running out, if you haven't realized this. We're running out pretty fast. She mentions Wall-E. And I watched that movie recently myself. It's interesting. Because did anybody see that movie? Am I just talking? But what was the one thing he was searching for, they were searching for? Anybody? The life, the green, right? They were waiting for one green to show back up on the planet Earth because there wasn't any left. And if you didn't realize this, the Earth only has so much land on it, right? 25% land. And there's only so much green on that land left. Now, the greens produce oxygen. Again, first thing you need, oxygen. Okay, so the greens are producing oxygen. Now, there's a great website out there called GoogleEarth.com. And I found out about 5 years ago about Google Earth. And I went to find Hippocrates in Florida, in West Palm Beach. I found Hippocrates. And I went down the road and I looked for my apartment complex. My apartment complex wasn't there. There were greens there. There were trees there. So I went to look for my other place that I lived the year before. That wasn't there either. There were greens and trees there, too. Huh. But now they've updated Google Earth, and now I can find my apartment complex, the townhome, the condos, the strip malls, the parking lots, the roads. I can find all those things now, and I can't find the green anymore. So what are we running out of? We're running out of greens. When you run out of greens, you run out of oxygen. And Viktoras Kulvinskas, if you haven't heard of Viktoras Kulvinskas, he comes to Hippocrates a couple times a year, and he speaks of the global warming thing. Global warming. You see the Al Gore movie, Inconvenient Truth? If you haven't seen it, watch it. Okay, Al Gore, Inconvenient Truth. Suggested for everybody to watch. Now, he's talking about CO2 levels. I'm talking about oxygen. We're talking about the same thing, ultimately. Okay, Viktoras Kulvinskas says that global warming, just heating up that ocean, just a little 1 degree, is killing out the algae. Now, the algae produce 50% of our oxygen in our world, in our planet. So the greens on the land produce 50%, but the algae also produce 50%, and they're dying out now. Now, they can tell the oxygen content. They dig down the glaciers every 100 years or so. They can find the oxygen levels of our planet, of our atmosphere. And 100 years ago, we had over 30% of oxygen. Just 100 years ago, we had over 30% of oxygen. By the way, 100 years ago is a blink of an eye in this world's existence. I know we realize that, time takes time. No, 100 years is this fast. And so now, 100 years ago, we had over 30%. You know how much we have now? An average of 15%. That's all the oxygen that's left out there. And I say average of 15 because the most oxygen you're going to find out there, if you're lucky to live in a green environment, the most oxygen that you're going to find out there is 20 to 21%. That's the most anywhere. And that's about half of what it used to be. But any downtown major cities, down to 8 and 9%. What do you see on infomercials these days? Besides the magic bullet, girls going wild. Most infomercials these days are air filters, right? Air filters, air purifiers. You're seeing those all the time. Because and if you don't remember, does anybody remember smog reports? Anybody old enough to remember smog reports? I remember smog reports. Do you realize, and I saw a lot of people didn't raise your hand, a lot of younger crowd in here, but do you realize that since 1990, they basically stopped making smog reports altogether? I was out in San Diego when this happened. There was an announcement, a Los Angeles radio station that said if you live in LA, don't leave your home today because oxygen levels, smog levels are too high. This is what they said in 1990 to people in Los Angeles. Well, people woke up and they panicked. And so they figured, geez, if it's that bad outdoors, how can it be any better in my home? And so they freaked out. And so this was all over the news the next day, and they said WKPBR in Los Angeles made a mistake. It's okay. You can leave your home. Smog levels are normal. Normal. That's what the word they used. But since 1990, they basically stopped making smog reports because of that. Because people started to wake up and hear that and started to panic. Because oxygen, again, first thing you need, right? And I know for a fact, anytime I drove from San Diego to San Francisco, I got tired driving through Los Angeles. I got lethargic. I got a little tired. Remember I keep telling you to breathe? Doctors are prescribing plants to people in their homes these days. Have more plants in your homes. That's a simple one. I'll tell you what, man, everybody's trying to go faster and faster out there. I see it. I live out there. And if you live out there in the world today, you suffer from stress. We all do. Everybody suffers from stress. And we have to slow down a little bit. And actually, I would tell you to turn your power off once in a while in your house or your apartment or wherever you live. Turn your power off. Because now what you're going to have to do is you're going to have to talk to each other. You're going to actually have to talk to your children. Children don't have ADD. They have lack of you. They have lack of mom and dad. They have lack of attention. They have lack of answers. That's all we want. That's all we wanted as a kid. I'm the youngest of 8. I know better than anybody else. We just want the answers. We want someone to spend time with us. So shut off your power once in a while. Who would actually do that? Who would actually shut off their power? I don't know anybody that would actually do that. So, oh, that would be awesome. You guys had a power outage here, right? You had a power outage here in the city one time? It was a couple years ago, I guess. That, and I hate to say, I hate to use the word disaster, because we get hurricanes in Florida, and people think, oh, well, wasn't it awful that we had a hurricane? No. You know what it was? It was an enema. It was a colonic. It was cleaning us out. Do you know that if something shows up on your skin, on your body, what's the first thing you do? You pick at it. Get off there. Cut it down. Stop. You try to get it off your body, right? The earth is doing the same thing to us. It's not happy. So it does these hurricanes. Now, the hurricanes are not a bad thing. The hurricanes and every tornadoes and all these natural disasters are not disasters. It's the earth just going, as gently as it could, hey, cut it out. Wake up. Cut it. Stop doing that. That's all it's doing to us. And we need to start waking up. I wish there was a magical pill or a powder or a tablet, a vibration, an energy, a magnet. I wish that existed. In my 18 years, it's something new every year. So I don't sell products. I don't believe in selling products because it's BS. Ultimately, what I do believe in, if there was one pill I could give you right now that would help you faster than anything else, it would be the pill that the guy took in the Matrix. What was it, the red pill? Anybody see the Matrix? That's the only pill I would give you. That's the pill worth taking. Wake up. Take a deep breath. I taught a class at Hippocrates for about 2 years, and they stopped me from teaching it because there's a few people in the class that didn't understand why I was standing up here teaching a class and crying. They couldn't get it. And so they got upset, and they went and told on me. Well, why was he teaching a class, and why was he crying during this class? And my class was called Moving Beyond Fear. And my first question in that class was, if you could choose happiness in every moment of every day, would you do it? Think about that question. If you could choose happiness in every moment of every day, would you do it? Well, then why aren't you? Because ultimately you can. Nobody has the ability to make you feel anything. I don't have that power. Don't give me that power. I got enough problems. Nobody has the power to make you feel anything. If someone does make you feel something, take a deep breath and own that feeling because it's yours. I didn't make you feel that way. You asked me to be in front of you so you can feel that way. Because honestly, you're never in the wrong place at the wrong time. That's an impossibility. You're always in the right place at the right time. Because once it happens, that's the way it was supposed to be. There is no other way to look at it. You can sit there and focus on the past and focus on the future, but ultimately it's only about right now. Because anytime something happens, there you go. That's the way it was supposed to be. Now move forward. Fear prevents us from living in the now. That was the other thing I used to talk about. Because I thought that was a pretty good definition of what fear is. Fear prevents us from living in the now. You can't be present when you're trying to think about and worry about everything that's supposed to be happening. And you remember how I said I don't have many friends. I don't have many friends because what do most people want to talk about is food. Which I have no interest any day in my life ever talking about food. The second thing, money. Right? Money. Especially the economy these days. Ooh, the economy's bad. Yeah, and that's the one thing people want to talk about all the time. I don't want to talk about that. As a matter of fact, 1% of your entire day should be spent thinking about, talking about, or wondering about money. And 1% of your entire day should be spent thinking about, talking about, or wondering about food. Wow, that was my whole day. What do I talk about now? What do I do? Hey, there's a great guy out there, and I love David Wolf. Anybody hear David Wolf? I love David Wolf. I've been to his lectures. I like David Wolf. What is he talking about now? Chocolate. All right, raw cacao, whatever you want to call it. BS, it's chocolate. The guy is talking about chocolate. So who would go to his lecture after hearing an hour of him talk about chocolate? Who would argue with him? Nobody. Because everybody wants him to tell them it's okay to eat chocolate. That's all you want to hear, right? You just want permission to do something you've been wanting to do anyway. So you're not going to argue with the guy. I love the guy. I think he's awesome. I think he's a genius. I'm just pissed off that he thought about it before I did. To tell you that it's okay to eat something that you've been wanting to hear it's okay. Right? That's all you wait for is permission for someone to tell you it's okay to do something. If you want that permission, I will give it to you right now. Every one of you in here. Any food that you're thinking about eating, I'm giving you permission to eat it. Do you like me anymore? Do I make any more sense? Wow, why are you waiting for someone to tell you it's okay or not okay to do something that you already know to be true? You're eating food to define your happiness. Don't let food define your happiness. I went with my sister gambling. We had a slot machine, and she has this big hit. And she looks at me, and she's like, Michael, look. And I looked at her, and I'm smiling like, well, that's great. And then she gets this straight face, and she looks at me, and she goes, don't let the machine define your happiness. Like, that was awesome. So let's talk about gambling real quick. So I'm in Las Vegas with my mom and dad. Don't ask me what I was doing by myself in Las Vegas with my parents, except now I'm addicted to slot machines, and I blame them. But this was about 10 years ago. I'm in Las Vegas with my parents, and my parents are in their 70s. And they go to bed at 8 o'clock every night. So we're in Las Vegas having a good time. But at 8 o'clock in a casino, I lost mom and dad. But I figured they went to bed. They went to sleep because that's what they do. They're in their 70s. They go to bed. So about 11 o'clock rolls around. I can't find mom and dad. And I want to be a good son. You know, I want to go check on them, see if they're okay. I was broke. I was going to get more cash. So I went. Don't tell them that. They don't like that part. So I went up to the room, and I'm being real quiet, and I opened the door, and the room was empty. My parents, 11 o'clock at night, were wandering around Las Vegas, spending my inheritance. So I went into the room, and I waited up for them, and about 1 o'clock in the morning, they came back up to the room, wide awake, showing me all this money that they won. I said, shut up, give me the money. What are you still doing awake? It's 1 o'clock in the morning. You guys should be in bed. So we go to sleep. It's 3 a.m. It's 2 hours later, and I look up, and there's my dad heading towards the door. I said, Dad, it's 3 o'clock in the morning. What are you doing? He said, I'm going back down to the casino. You want to come with me? I said, yes. And I've actually been telling that story for over 10 years. I've met people that were guests of ours at Hippocrates that confirmed this with me because that was their job in the casino. Some of your downtown major casinos in Las Vegas will raise the percentage of oxygen inside the casino about 10%. And no matter how much you smoke, no matter how much you drink, you won't fall asleep when you're breathing in that much more oxygen. Now, I can give you right now the biggest cause of obesity in the world today. I just did. Lack of breathing, lack of oxygen makes you tired. and eating too much. Those are the biggest causes of obesity in the world today. And you're not moving enough. Obviously, we're not getting enough exercise because you're not getting enough exercise because you're eating too much because you're tired, and then you're not breathing enough, so you're getting tired. So take another deep breath. It's free. I'm not charging you. Breathe. Oxygen bars are showing up all over the place, right? Oxygen bars. A friend of mine got back here from the city. She said, I went to an oxygen bar. I said, how was it? She said they offered flavored oxygen. And I thought to myself, seriously? Flavored oxygen? Are we getting that bored with breathing that we have to have a flavor to our air? All right, I want chocolate. I'm going to breathe in that all day long. It's funny to me, flavored oxygen. So, but here's the most important thing. So when I talk about what's simple is true, first of all, we've got to have the earth back in our food chain. The earth, the connection, the vibration, the energy, the vitality, the life force of earth. Take a deep breath. I grow wheatgrass in soil. I will not grow it without soil. Because I believe in the connection to earth, mother, the earth. We have to have that vibration, that energy back into our life. And that's what we're all trying to find again. Again, I don't have any more information than you already have. Nobody does. It's just tapping into it. It's being awake to it. You know, I got into this 18 years ago. Everything Natalia said, I'm like, yeah, I got that 18 years ago. It's not the food anymore for me anymore. But it has to start that way. You have to start somewhere. Absolutely. But I see people too many times get focused on that part of it, and then they lose the big picture again. You know, instead of going to a grocery store, now you're going to a health food store. Awesome. That's a great difference. But again, don't let food consume. Interesting, right? Don't let food consume your life. And as she was saying, she was preparing your bodies by getting healthier, right? Otherwise, you're going to have a barren body. That's the same thing we're doing to the earth. The earth is becoming barren. So we're dying out too. And the same thing's happening. And this isn't right, wrong, good, bad. I'm not here to say that. I'm not here to scare you. I'm not saying I'm right and there's somebody else is wrong. Everybody has opinions, of course. But this is just about education and understanding a little bit more of the connection we need to get back to the earth. And I wish there was more earth in New York City. We need to get back to earth. We have to find it within all of us. Because it's that bright light that just gets clouded. We get clouded with conditions, with programs, with rules, with restrictions. Again, religions, friends, family, whatever. And we just lose sight of it. But we all own it. And ownership's a powerful word. I don't know if anyone's ever told you that. But remember how I said nobody can make you feel anything. But if I say something tonight and it makes you feel something, own that feeling. Take responsibility for that feeling. I think it's easy to put your responsibility of that feeling off, right? And say, well, they made me feel that way. Nobody has the ability to make you feel anyway. But it's easier to say someone made me feel that way than it is to take responsibility for that feeling and own it. So take a deep breath. Own that feeling. How much more time I have? Okay, I'm looking at my notes. I made some notes in the back while I was sitting back there. I made some notes. We talked about, okay, yeah, great. Can we talk about poop some more? Oh, no, I'm just kidding. Food. Juice bar. Did you realize a lot of juice bars these days, by the way, besides the one you're going to hear about a little bit in a second, a lot of juice bars these days are fast food candy stores for vegans and vegetarians. They're candy stores. Because where are they going? What are they making? They're grabbing a blender. They're putting ice cubes in a blender. Not a lot of nourishment in ice cubes, by the way. I didn't realize that. And then they're going over to the fake juice container and they're pumping it with fake juice, which is also about 80% sugar. And then they're taking a protein powder, charging another $2 for that, which is also 60% sugar. So basically, it's a candy store. The only way to get a good green juice, obviously, if you're not getting it from the gentleman who's going to speak after me, the only way to get it is when you go into these juice bars, ask them to make you a green drink. Because they will have to use fresh greens because they can't store them. So they have to use them fresh. They can't just pump it out of a machine. Fruits, they can. That's why we don't do a lot of fruits. They are high in sugar. Okay, now some people can tolerate fruits better than others. Okay, that's great. But for the most part, ask them to make you a green drink and see how that goes for you. We talked about breaking a fast. Talked about, I like to define nutrient because a lot of people like to do it scientifically with nutrient, you know, what vitamins and minerals, all these things your body needs. I want to define it as life force, as energy, and the closest you get to earth, the higher in nutrient, the higher nutritional source. So the grasses are the most complete foods on the planet Earth, all grass. Doesn't matter, wheat, rye, barley, spelt, I don't care what you're eating. The grasses are the most life force, life energy, nutrient, life force. There we go. But I'm not going to define it scientifically. I don't believe in science anymore because honestly, I'll tell you why I don't believe in science. Someone asked me the other day, is there vitamin K in wheatgrass? I said, do you want there to be? And they said, what are you talking about? I said, I got 15 different laboratory analyses of wheatgrass. By the way, one analysis of wheatgrass cost about $30,000. I said, I got 15 of them. 14 of them say that there is vitamin K in wheatgrass, and one of them says there is not vitamin K in wheatgrass. So what is it that you want to know? What do you want me to teach you? A guy came up to me at a health show and said, well, my doctor told me I can't have all these greens, but you seem like you know what you're talking about. What should I do? I gave him his list. I looked at the greens, and I gave him his list back. And he said, really, I want you to help me. And I said, how much do you want me to help me? He said, well, just help me. I said, let me borrow that list again. He gives the list back to me. I ripped it up. I threw it away. I said, you can eat greens. Because everything on his list that the doctor told not to eat was all cooked greens. It was cooked this, cooked that, cooked, but it wasn't anything raw greens. He said, you can eat greens. Anybody can eat greens. Chew your food. Chew your food. Breathe. Take a deep breath. I made notes back there. I'm going through them. Oh. I don't want to get into that. Sorry. There was a show I saw recently, a movie I saw recently, Martian Child, with John Cusack. Anybody see that? Oh, that was awesome. I know, you know, you mothers, I'm up here, I'm telling you all this stuff, and I haven't really touched on any subject maybe that you want to talk about, but I thought Martian Child was good, for me especially, you know, and again, with that whole ADD thing, and just having someone that listens to you. I thought that was an important thing. So if you haven't seen it, it's called Martian Child. It's a good movie. Organics, soak your nuts. I already said that. I'm going to say that again. All right, take a deep breath. I'll answer a couple questions, and then I'll pass it over, and we're done. One person should never do any more than 2 ounces at any one given time. Okay, 2 ounces of juice, again, equivalent to almost 5 pounds of fresh vegetables. So the human body, doesn't matter the size, shape, height, weight, dimension, blood type, where you're from, you don't need any more than 2 ounces at any one given time. Now, I talked about how bad it was here in the city. You know, you can't really get fresh wheatgrass juice here in the city. It's not good. It's awful. Ultimately, when you grow a tray of wheatgrass, there's a time that you have to cut the tray. But see, a lot of times they're not cutting it. If you bring them a fresh tray of wheatgrass, they sit it in the window for a display so people could see it. It sits in the window for 2 or 3 days, and literally, in those 2 or 3 days, it ages about 80 years sitting in that tray. It's dying in the tray. So hence the reason it starts tasting worse and worse, and it starts making you feel a little nauseated. Because basically it's old, it's not being taken care of. And it's kind of like people. The older it gets, the more bitter it gets. It just happens. I threw that chair. It's a joke. It's a joke laugh. Yes. As a matter of fact, and I should mention this now, and again, thank you, Mary and Colleen, for having me here tonight. I appreciate it. I have a website. It's hippocratesgreenhouse.com, but I'm changing it to wheatgrassgreenhouse.com. I own them both. They just take you to the same place. So whether you go to hippocratesgreenhouse.com or wheatgrassgreenhouse.com, you'll find me. And I'm open for, you know, if I don't get to anything tonight to answer all your questions, send me emails. I just don't do telephone. I don't answer the phone. I got enough tumors. But I will do emails, and I will email left and right all the time. And you can talk directly to me via email. I love email. So send me a question if you have anything. But I will say that on my website, I am pretty good at emails. I will say that I do have, I just did it about 4 months ago, a brand new DVD that's a 2-hour thing teaching anybody, indoors, outdoors, the city, anywhere you live. You can grow wheatgrass fresh in your home. And I haven't developed the selling it yet because, you know, I come here to the city, by the way, twice a year. Anybody hear of the New Life Expo? It's over at the Hotel New Yorker across from Madison Square Garden. I'm here twice a year. I'll be here actually at the end of March, and you can actually try some of my wheatgrass. I know, again, the stuff here in the city is awful. People always want to know, where can I get your stuff? Your stuff tastes good. Well, because I use a good seed. That's the first thing. I use a complete seed. But the second thing is I know how to grow it. So that's what I want to teach people. I want to teach people how to grow it and to get the right seed. So I'm working on setting that whole thing up. So in other words, even if you live here in the city and you want to get fresh wheatgrass every day, I'm going to be able to ship you next day air right to your front door. So all you need is a juicer at home. And I'm going to give you a free juicer if you sign up for, you know, like a month of getting it once a week. I'll throw in that free little hand juicer. Now, the hand juicer, people say it's a hand juicer. Well, first of all, you're putting your life force, right? You're using actually your energy because I said get the earth back in your food chain, get more oxygen back in your cells, make the body more alkaline, and increase circulation. Okay, move. get some kind of movement, whether it's yoga, however you want to do it, but get the blood circulating. So the hand juicer actually does that for you. And it's really simple to use. It's going to take a time or two to get used to it, but it's really easy to use. Okay, one more question. Yes. That's a good question. Basically, there's a time that you have to cut the whole tray. So when it reaches, and I teach that too, but when it reaches that jointing stage, that splitting stage, you cut the entire tray, and now that cut grass will store in the refrigerator up to a week to 10 days. So basically, and that's what the health food stores, that's what the juice bars should be doing. They should be getting fresh grass and then cutting it right away. And that's because you go to your health food stores, your grocery stores, things aren't growing, right? You get spinach, kale, parsley, they're not growing. You put them in the refrigerator because the refrigerator keeps them dormant, keeps them fresh. So fresh wheatgrass, after you cut it, it stays fresh. However, after you juice it, it does not stay fresh. So that's why you can store the fresh grass, but not the fresh juice. Okay, I'll do one more. Okay, good, I'm done. Anyway, thank you all for listening to me today. I appreciate it. Have a wonderful rest of your night. Bye-bye now. Bye-bye. Thank you, Mary.